If you're about to start decluttering for a move, you might want to pause for just a second, because the way that most people start is exactly what makes it feel so overwhelming. Most people begin decluttering the minute that they decide to move. They start sorting and making decisions and trying to tackle everything all at once. And it makes sense why you would do that, but that's also the moment when things start to feel really heavy and confusing and much harder than they need to be. So there's a much easier way to begin, and once you see it, everything can feel a lot different. I've moved 10 times in 10 years, so I know how quickly everything can start to feel overwhelming if you don't have a clear way to begin. One of the reasons why decluttering feels so overwhelming is because you're being asked to make a lot of decisions all at once. Every item has a question attached to it, whether it's a shirt or a box in the garage or a stack of papers. You're constantly asking yourself questions. Do I keep this? Do I need this? What if I regret letting this go? Do I pack it now or later? And all of those decisions start to stack up, and it becomes exhausting very quickly. But it's not just the number of decisions, there's also the emotional weight that a lot of people don't expect. Because you're not just sorting through things, you're sorting through memories, different seasons of your life, different parts of your identity, and that can bring up guilt or hesitation or a feeling of not being really ready to let something go. And on top of all that, there's often no clear place to start. So you're standing there looking at everything, trying to decide what to do first, while already feeling mentally and emotionally tired. And that's usually the point where people start to feel stuck. Not because they're unmotivated, but because they're overwhelmed by too many decisions, too much emotional weight, and no clear starting point. And that's not a motivation problem, that's a structure problem. I remember one of my early moves, before I had all of this experience under my belt, I started with a box of keepsakes, and I spent almost an entire afternoon going through just a handful of items. By the end of it, I was exhausted, I felt completely drained, and I also felt like I hadn't made any real progress, because looking around my house, I couldn't really see anything that was different. Most people don't get stuck because they're doing something wrong. They get stuck because of where they begin. And a lot of people start with the most sentimental things, like old photos or keepsakes or yearbooks, items that carry meaning. And before they've built up any real momentum, they've already gotten sidelined by sorting through memories and making some of the hardest decisions. Or they start in storage spaces like garages, attics, basements, places where things have been deferred for later. So instead of clear, easy decisions, they're immediately faced with the most complicated ones. And sometimes it's not even about where they start, it's about how much they try to get done at once. There's this feeling of needing to figure everything out right away, or go through the whole house, or make all the decisions at once, and have it all sorted and done as quickly as possible. And what that leads to is very slow progress, a lot of emotional exhaustion, and second guessing yourself about every single decision. And at a certain point, it feels easier to just stop. And if you're thinking, I don't really have the option to go slowly because my move is coming up and I need to get through all of this, that makes complete sense, and I have been where you are. When there's a deadline, it can feel like the only way to move forward is to tackle everything as quickly as possible. But trying to do everything at once is usually what slows everything down, because when every decision feels heavy and every space feels complicated, it becomes harder to keep going. So instead of moving faster, you end up feeling stuck or circling the same decisions or putting things off because it just feels like too much. So if you want to move quickly, the trick is to make the beginning easier. Start with decisions that don't carry as much weight. That way you can build momentum and stay in motion instead of getting stopped at the very beginning. You're still going to get through everything, I promise, but the way you start determines how steady your progress feels. So instead of trying to figure everything out all at once, it helps to start in a very different way. Not with the hardest decisions, but with the easiest ones. Look for areas that are low in emotion but high in volume. Things like kitchen items, everyday clothes, toiletries, maybe your linen closet, things that are easy to access, but they don't carry a lot of history or memories. But when decisions are easier, you move faster, and that's what builds momentum. And that momentum is what makes the rest feel really doable. It also helps to keep your focus very small from the beginning. So don't do the whole house or even the whole room, but just one small manageable area. Start with one shelf or one drawer at a time. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, declutter for shorter bursts of time instead of longer ones. I know that this can seem really counterintuitive, and I was just talking to someone who was decluttering today, and she said, I have so much clutter, I feel like I have to go really fast to get through it, or I have to spend hours and hours to do it and not give myself any breaks. And you're actually not going to make any progress doing that. The more overwhelmed you are and the more clutter you have, the smaller you have to start. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, declutter for shorter bursts of time, even if it's just 1 minute. That's why I made a playlist of 1-minute decluttering videos on my channel, because progress doesn't come from doing everything at once, it comes from staying in motion. And as you move through those easier decisions, you start to feel more confident and you start to feel less attached to the things that felt hard in the beginning. So instead of waiting until you feel clear and confident to begin, it works the other way around. Progress is what creates the clarity, and progress can start 1 minute at a time. If you haven't tried it yet, I encourage you to try the 1-minute decluttering method, and you will be amazed at how much you can get done in just 1 minute. In fact, I have a free 1-minute decluttering guide, and I will put that in the description to this video. If you've gotten any value out of this video so far, it would mean the world to me if you would hit that subscribe button so that I can reach more people and help more people. Subscribing is totally free, and the button lights up when you click it. Thanks so much. Let's keep going. Even when you start decluttering in the right place, there's something else that can slow you down, and that is decision fatigue. Every decision takes energy, and when you're making decisions back to back, it doesn't take very long before your brain starts to push back on you. And that's when you notice your focus drifting, or you find yourself wandering into another room and you completely forgot what you were doing. Or suddenly everything feels harder than it did a few minutes earlier. Not because anything changed, but because your mental energy is getting used up. And when that happens, even simple choices start to feel overwhelming. So instead of pushing through that feeling, it helps to work with it. Work with your brain instead of against it. So expect that your focus will come in waves. Expect your energy to come in waves, and give yourself simple ways to keep moving even when it does. So instead of asking, what's the right choice? What if I make a wrong choice? Come back to simple questions. These are the 2 most simple questions that I always come back to when I'm decluttering for a move. Number 1, do I use it or love it? Number 2, do I have space for it in the new place? That's it. That's all you have to think about right now. And when your energy dips, that's not a sign to push yourself harder. It's usually a sign to pause or reset. Step outside, take a breath, drink some water, and then you can come back with a clear mind. You don't have to force your way through this. You just need to keep moving without wearing yourself out. And alongside all of the decisions that you're making and all of the logistics, there's also the emotional side that can be really easy to overlook. Because you're not just sorting through things, you're sorting through pieces of your life. And that can bring up a lot of feelings. There can be guilt about letting something go that still feels meaningful, or something that you spent money on. There can be a fear of regret, like what if I get rid of this thing and I need it later? Or what if I wish that I hadn't gotten rid of it? And sometimes what you're holding on to isn't really the physical item itself, but what it represents, like a different season of your life, or a different version of you, or maybe a dream that you had that didn't quite work out the way that you hoped. And all of that is completely normal. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It just means that you care. But letting go of something doesn't mean that you're losing that thing. It means that you're making space for where you're going, for how you want to live, and for what your life actually supports in this next chapter, what you're stepping into instead of what you're leaving behind. You are allowed to move forward without taking everything with you, but you're also allowed to hold on to those things that you use and love. As you move forward with downsizing, try not to measure your progress by how much you've finished. Pay attention to how you begin, because when you start with the decisions that feel manageable, it becomes much easier to keep going. You don't have to sort through your entire home at once, and you don't have to make every single decision exactly right. In fact, spoiler alert, there really isn't a right or wrong decision for most of the stuff that you're going to declutter. You just need a way to move through your belongings in a way that doesn't leave you mentally and emotionally drained. And if you're wishing that you had someone who could come alongside you and help you downsize without all the stress and second guessing, that's exactly what I do inside my Decluttered Move course. So when you're ready, you can scan the code on your screen or click the link in the description to get started. I'll meet you there.